This is one I've been waiting for a long time. I have wanted a model of this subject for over 20 years. AMT did one. They didn't do it justice. Finally, Polar Lights has stepped up to the plate. This is, I believe, their first entirely new tooling Star Trek kit in a couple of years, probably since the NX-01 2500 scale that they released with the 7-ship Enterprise box set, I believe. Yeah, it's the one and only, the USS Benjamin Sisko's motherfucking Pimp Hand. Oh, I am excited for this. I am excited for this. I love the Defiant. When Deep Space Nine started, I was a huge fan of TNG. Huge fan. You know, I always considered seasons 3, 4, and 5 the best years of Next Generation, the Michael Piller years. And then when he left to co-create Deep Space Nine and ran it for its first 2 seasons, that's when TNG started its long, slow decline into irrelevancy, and Brannon Braga kind of started to take a more prominent role. That said, Braga and Ron Moore, they did some great work together. Series finale, still fantastic, top-notch, love it. But Piller on Deep Space Nine, I wasn't super into. The first couple of years of Deep Space Nine just weren't really my jam. I mean, they were fine. They weren't bad. It wasn't a bad show. It was just kind of boring. It wasn't until season 3 started, when Piller had stepped aside to co-create Voyager, that Ira Steven Behr came in as the new showrunner, and the show really got off the ground. Yeah, that's when Deep Space Nine got the USS Defiant. That's when the Dominion, like, they had been teasing the Dominion for about a half a season prior to this, but they were first introduced in force in the season 2 finale, the episode titled "The Jem'Hadar," and man, were they a threat that the Federation was not ready for. So they introduced this new ship, the Defiant, which Captain Sisko, or at this time still Commander Sisko, had been a key design team leader on after the Battle of Wolf 359, when the Federation realized that they were woefully underprepared for any kind of significant alien threat. The Defiant was designed as a Borg killer. Sadly, the only time she ever got a chance to actually face the Borg was in the movie First Contact, where she got her ass handed to her. But she held in there a long time. From what I understand, from what the canon has stated, and from what fans have inferred, the battle in First Contact started well outside of Federation, or well outside of Earth territory, and then the Defiant just followed her the whole way, just pounding, pounding, and pounding, while other larger ships were getting destroyed left and right. The Defiant held in there, but still did not survive. Ended up getting disabled and left adrift. The original plan, in fact, was to destroy her. But the staff of Deep Space Nine would not let that happen, because the ship was essential to the ongoing storyline of Deep Space Nine, and they didn't want to have it destroyed, you know, at that point. The Defiant eventually would get destroyed in, I believe, the second battle of the Chintaka system in one of the later episodes of Season 7, by a new alien faction that joined the Dominion called the Breen, who all look like Princess Leia disguised as Boushh, or Boushh, the bounty hunter from Return of the Jedi. And they all speak in electronic gibberish. So yes, the venerable Defiant, she went down fighting. She got her ass kicked. But then they built her a new one. They issued the station a new Defiant-class ship, the USS Sao Paulo, which was renamed the Defiant, and so that they could reuse the same stock footage. Also because, you know, Defiant, it's iconic. It's come to be associated with Deep Space Nine, even if it was only used in like in the series finale. I think it was introduced at the beginning of the series finale. It wouldn't be the same if it was a new name. Even if it's a new ship, it wouldn't be the same if it was a new name. So, they reused the same stock footage, but also wanted to maintain that legacy. Deep Space Nine's ship is the Defiant, and it's the front line of the Dominion War. The Defiant class herself, after having some initial kinks worked out with the Defiant herself, the prototype, she went on to be a very heavily used class of ships in the Dominion War. I believe on screen at least a dozen ships were seen, including the Defiant herself, the Sao Paulo, the Valiant from the eponymous episode, most of which were destroyed. I think there were a couple that appeared in an episode of Voyager. I think the episode was called Message in a Bottle. Doctor gets sent across a wormhole or some sort of thing across... this is the first time they make contact with the Federation after being gone for 4 years. And then there's probably a half dozen more appearances of various Defiant class ships. But they were small, they were fast, they were tough. And the first time I ever saw that little ship fire those pulse phaser cannons and quantum torpedoes, oh my god, I fell in love. Can you tell I love this little ship?
Little.
Yeah. I'm excited. I am excited. I am so happy to be taking a look at this thing. It's small. It's 1/1000th scale, so it measures out at 6 3/4 inches long, which uses the apparently canonical 130 meter size. The size of the ship in continuity always kind of varied. It was never really possible to establish exactly how long it was, because most Federation ships have windows. It's pretty easy to scale a ship based on like rows of decks. Each deck is usually 3 meters from floor to the next floor. So it's usually pretty easy to scale a ship based on its height, and you can measure out how long it is based on that. The Defiant has no windows, or very, very few windows. So it makes it very difficult to really determine. You can only really use external cues and scale references based on other objects to figure out how long it is. And in some sources it's as small as 50 meters, in some sources it's as long as about 200 meters. But I think they've kind of settled on 130, which is why they went with 6 3/4 inches or 130 centimeters. Actually, no, this would be 6 3/4 inches would be about 16 centimeters. So, I don't know. I'm going to have to do some math. I'm going to have to figure this out. Because, 6 inches would be 15 centimeters, because 12 inches is 30 centimeters is a foot. So 6 3/4 would be about 16, 17 centimeters. So the scale mystery continues. Anyway, enough babbling. Let's actually take a look at this sucker. So this is a pretty small box. It's pretty typical of the size of like the 1000th scale TOS era stuff or 2500 scale TOS stuff. Fairly similar in size to that, but the box design, like the box art, is very, very different. This is a very stylish and very new style of box art. You know, the classic type logo with the series call out, relevant captain. It's very attractive. I really dig it. Box top shows off some of the features as well as the marking sheet. It does include a display stand, but if you opt not to, there is a plug that you can insert into the hole in its place. Either end just have duplicates of the box art, while the other side has this nice shot of the underside, as well as probably my favorite quote about the Defiant herself. She may have flaws, but she has teeth. Oh, and oh boy does she. Underside, Just has some more feature callouts, snap assembly, registry markings and panel decals, decals, dome base with metal support rod, molded in gray with clear parts. Shows off the size, number of parts. Clear parts make it easy for lighting, and then a bit of history. So clear parts. First up, we got the Bussard collectors. Or no, these would be the back end of the impulse engines. These, I guess, would be the warp field grills. These would be the Bussard collectors. This would be the deflector. I'm not sure what these are supposed to be. I don't recognize these from anywhere on the ship. Oh, these would probably be the rows of escape pods, or whatever they're supposed to be, right here. And then these, I'm guessing, might be part of the engines, probably the impulse engines, and these are, I would guess, the phaser cannons. There's two different types, look like they're mounted on two different locations each. Yeah. Standard dome base. Doesn't look like this one includes the ball joint adapter, and it is just a solid rod. It's not a tube. First up for parts, we've got the upper hull. The runner has a lot of flash. That is a lot of flash. But there's not any on the parts that I can see. It looks very clean. The panel lines are nice. They're kind of thick, but not too bad. They're actually better than I was expecting based on the box art. From the box art, I was expecting they were going to be like very rounded and very soft. But these actually look like they're quite solid, quite you know, quite squared off and fine. So that's nice. And this is those rows where those four clear insert parts would go, and then the nacelles would bolt on to the outside, and the Bussard collector forward array would dock right here, would slot into right here. It's not very long, as you can see. I think the box said 6 3/4 inches. Hull underside. Again, the panel lines all look really nice. There's the socket for the display stand. There's not a lot of parts to this thing. So it's just the two hull halves, the insert plug for here, the Bussard collector, the two nacelle parts, and then a few additional Greebly add-ons. So it's pretty simple. This runner has a lot less flash on it. There's just a little bit right here. So it looks like that that first one was an anomaly. I'm not sure what could cause a brand new tool like this to have this much flash in it, but hey, whatever. Also, it's got the printed licensing and manufacturing relevant stuff in here. Anyway. And last up, we've got the two different warp nacelles. You've got the inserts for the warp nacelles. You've got the lower cap for the socket. You've got the bow where the deflector array would go, and I'm not sure what this or that are. Probably stuff that go in the aft of the ship someplace. But yeah, just some additional detail parts. So nice to see that there's lots of extra bits and pieces that that add on to it. It's fairly simple, but should be a fun build. So we got our marking sheet. Only includes registry and names for the Defiant, and in fact only the original Defiant, NX-74205, and not the renamed Sao Paulo, which had a new registry number, at least in any new footage. All the original stock footage still maintained the NX-74205. But there's also plenty of additional detail panels should you opt not to paint. And there are options for windows, which I was not aware that Defiant had. In fact, these windows looks like there's a lot more of them than there should be, considering the size of the ship. But the printing is real nice. None of them are particularly small, so you know, the quality of the printing is fine. But yeah, it got some pinstriping and, you know, lots of nice detail for adding up. So you pretty much would just, it looks like you'd pretty much just have to paint the base coat, paint the clear parts, apply the markings, and then you're done. Yeah. And finally, the instructions. Just a black and white sheet photo of the completed model. Starts with the bow and deflector, assembly of the upper and lower hull, nacelles, add-on bits. So yeah, the two parts I couldn't identify. It looks like those go. This one is part of a power array under the deflector, and that other one is something for the very aft of the ship. Those other clear parts are for the impulse engines. And yeah, the other clear parts look like they are, in fact, the phaser cannons. And then finally, attachment to a stand, which it looks like it does actually include a clear ball joint adapter, which is strange because I don't see one anywhere in here, but whatever. And finally, on the back side is your paint and marking guide. It pretty much just calls for 3 different shades of gray, clear blue, clear red, copper, and then a ton of markings. So yeah, doesn't look like it's going to be all that difficult to slap this thing together. Most of the colors are just water slides. So that is the Defiant.
So I'm really excited. I haven't done a lot of research about this model. I haven't seen any build-ups of it, so I don't really know what the quality of it is from that regard, but based on what my experience has been from Polar Lights, /Round 2, I think this is going to go together really well. Like, they've done some really, really nice work here. In fact, there's something I forgot to point out when looking at the parts. That edge has it's kind of beveled. There's like a notch on the edge of it, so it'll act as a natural light block. So there, you won't have, if you opt to light this, if you have a bunch of LEDs inside this thing, you won't have to like putty up the seam like crazy to block the light. You won't have to worry about light leaks through that seam. I mean, obviously you'd want to like putty it lightly just to, you know, smooth it out, but that's something that I think they started doing with the large-scale TOS Enterprise. You know, creating that kind of stepped-in notch. I don't know what to call it. I want to say just kind of like a beveled, whatever. Anyway, so that's a really nice feature. I really dig that, and it gives you a lot of real estate to apply glue to when putting this thing together. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I like snap fit kits, is that you can, you know, attach the parts, but keep a little tiny gap, just enough that you can get the tip of the brush from one of these. This is like, to me, a fine, extra thin cement. You just kind of touch it to that gap. You leave it open just enough that there's like a hair's width. They're just a hair's width apart, and you just touch the tip of the brush to it, and it'll just flow along with capillary action. It'll flow along for like a couple of centimeters, and you just keep doing that around the entire perimeter until you've got a solid bead of glue between the halves. And then once that's done, then you squeeze them together, and the, you know, big, thick locator pegs, which are designed to hold these things together, will hold that seam together, so you don't need to clamp it if you don't want to. And it'll just kind of push that melted plastic out and create a nice little bead along the edge. Then you leave that, let it cure for a day or two. Then you can just take some, if you want to, you can take a hobby knife and just slice that bead off, and you've almost got a perfect seam right there. I've done that with a million Gundams. I've done that with so many other models, and it works so perfectly. Sometimes if you don't let it cure quite enough, when the glue hasn't completely cured, it'll still shrink a little bit, and you will end up with a little bit of a divot. But if you let it cure for at least like 36 hours, it should be fine. Alternatively, you know, putty is always an option. I prefer using glue for seams because putty is messy, and I've never had very good luck using putty rather than glue. But yeah, this feels like it's going to be a super easy model to do. Masking shouldn't be difficult. Assembly shouldn't be difficult. Yeah, it's not something I think I'm going to get to this week, but it's something I think I can probably slap together in, I would say, 4 days. Start to finish. Full assembly, full paint job, everything. Should be able to get it done in like 4 to 5 days. So, yeah. That's that for now. I am going to have another chrome stripping video coming up in the next few days. I think I mentioned that in a brief live stream that I did a few days ago. These are the chrome pistons from the version 2.0 Gundam Mark II. I'm going to strip the chrome from these using a few different processes. Just to see which one works best. So I'm excited to try. That's all there is to say about that upcoming stuff. So again, like I said, keep an eye on my Twitter. I'll be posting about when I'll be doing that. Also keep an eye on my Instagram. You can find some recent pictures that I posted of my battle damaged Zaku and whatever else there. There will be links down below for all of that. Yeah. Guess that's all there is to say. Thank you everyone out there for watching, and happy modeling.